What would a realistic dream offseason look like for the Green Bay Packers? Sounds Gouda will tell you how Goody can put the Packers back in the Super Bowl on their $44 million budget.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Relf. As always, we want to thank you for being here, listening to the show, engaging with us on YouTube, or any other way that you have partaken in Sounds Gouda so far. We love doing this, and we're excited to be here and talking Packers ball again with you. Just a reminder, we have new content coming out right now every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So jumping into today's topic, because we have a lot to discuss. What does a dream Packers offseason look like? And how do we make that work? And we're not totally in fantasy land here, right? We don't have unlimited cap space. We've only got 8 draft picks. What does creating a dream Packers offseason look like? Again, based in reality on some of these factors. And let's talk about some of the factors that make sense or that we need to take into consideration to, again, base this in reality, right? So we have about $45 million if you round up in cap space, which is about 13th in the NFL right now. And the Packers can create $74 more million by restructuring or adding void years to some of these players' contracts. So just want to shout out Ken Ingalls, which we follow on X. He's definitely provided some of the most in-depth salary cap information on the Green Bay Packers. I love to follow him. And I know Rob does too, because we can get a lot of really great information. So where do the Packers have some opportunities to move some money around if needed? Today's exercise, we're going to try to stick within our budget, but some guys that are going to be around for a while, you could restructure, right? Jordan Love, you could do a simple restructure and generate almost $9 million alone in moving some money around for him, converting that to a signing bonus. I don't think the Packers should really be adding void years to people's contracts at this point in time, because you end up like the New Orleans Saints, which we'll touch on a little bit later. And being cap hell well beyond your Super Bowl window. You know, some other guys are going to be around. They can move some money around with Xavier McKinney and create almost $7 million. Josh Jacobs as well. So some of these cornerstone guys, you know, Josh Jacobs, you could create about $4 million of cap space on a simple restructure. So alone, if you restructured, converted some of those guys into signing bonuses, for the coming year, I'm doing some quick math, 9, 15, you can create about 19 or $20 million. So, I mean, there's some aid in being able to afford a Devontae Adams or a Myles Garrett if you were to make a big splash and needed to figure out how to make the financials work. So that's a little bit on the cap. But Rod, tell us about some of the other factors that we're going to take into consideration in creating our dream here.
Well, yeah. So like positions of need, obviously as well, right? Like as Jordan is alluding to, it just depends on how far deep you want to go, right? Like you don't want to be the New Orleans Saints typically, but also too, how much do you want to be able to quote unquote compete, for a Super Bowl? So being able to add another star or two at our positions of need, defensive end, cornerback, wide receiver, center, defensive tackle, and linebacker, depending on what happens with Eric Wilson and Isaiah McDuffie, would obviously help us, right, too? And then along with our draft picks as well. But, getting a wow factor, couple of guys in there, right? So, if we got a Devontae Adams, a bucket getter on third down, an excellent route runner, somebody who obviously knows the Packers and knows that and that system would be tremendous. And then you get a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett or Josh Sweat, right, or whatever, type of edge that immediately comes in there and is able to help you and is able to help the Packers win. So the whole point too with this is just to be as realistic as possible. Obviously, this comes in for the depth of the free agent class and the draft class as well. And then the methods of addition, right? Draft, free agency, trade. So there's just a couple of options to consider if you're going to be doing some of these restructuring or getting a free agent or depending on who you get in the draft class.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the plan. We're going to take this step by step, probably in terms of maybe wow factor or tackling some of our biggest positions of need. So part 1 of the plan, drum roll please, we're going to trade for Max Crosby. How is this realistic? How do we get this done? You know, Rob and I have had some really in-depth conversations. We've talked and you know, viewed you know, things that are realistic on X, what some of the other projections are putting out there. So what would it take to get done and to make it work in this scenario? 1, we trade Jair Alexander to the Raiders. That alone, Max Crosby for Jair Alexander's salary caps and contracts are pretty much equal over the next 2 years. So you can add a Max Crosby by just even throwing in Jair Alexander in the trade in this scenario. And I would hope that they would be intrigued by a guy when he's healthy, that he's a top 10, top 5 cornerback in this league that's still only, you know, 27, maybe 28 years old. Part 2 of that is you got to give something to get something. Some people might give us some flack for this, but we're going to give up LVN in this trade, which we're okay with because we're immediately upgrading LVN for Max Crosby and put Max Crosby and Rashawn Gary at opposite ends of the field. And I mean, that is that heavy 1-2 punch that you're talking about. And then we got to give up next year's first. They're probably going to want this year's first. We can probably barter with them to make it next year's first. But as we talked about, we want to make a selection this year with the draft being in Green Bay. So if you don't like giving up LVN, here's probably your other option. You probably need to give up this year's second round pick. And I would rather use that second round pick for one of our other needs and let somebody go and have a fresh start in LVN that has kind of been disappointing so far. Not ready to give up on him just in general, but be willing to do that in this trade to get Max Crosby. So I don't think we need to spend too much more time talking about what Max Crosby would bring to this team and roster from an impact sense. That's been heavily litigated and we know the results. So let's talk about the next part of the plan. So Rob, tell me what phase 2 is.
Yeah, phase 2, a Josh Myers replacement, signing Drew Dahlman, who will be 26 years old. He is the center for the Atlanta Falcons. Really, really solid and young center. You know, overall PFF grade throughout his tenure, 78.8, which is very good. His pass block grade from 24, 66.6. But as Jordan and I have both alluded to on previous pods, that's the Packers' offensive line coaching strength, is to be able to teach up their offensive linemen how to be very, very good pass protectors. And then this one is probably the one that excites me the most, but a run block grade of 79.8, so almost an 80, which is excellent in the run block. So that one it looks really good too. And then a spot track projection for him, 3 years, about 40 million, and then 13 million average annual value for him too. But so just to give you some context on that too, for Josh Myers, he also will be 26-year-old, but his overall grade from 24 was 55.3. His pass blocking grade from 24 was 63.4. Again, PFF metrics. Run block grade here too. This is where you get a significant, and I mean significant upgrade, 52.2. And then a possible spot track projection for him that I'm sure he'll get on the market is 3 years, 24 million, and about 8 million annual average.
Yeah, and I really like that. You know, there is a $5 million difference in those players on an average basis. But, you know, we saw last year that Matt LaFleur really wants to lean into this game being a running, you know, leaning into the run. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to continue to perfect that, but also gives us an opportunity to continue to be an effective passing team and have somebody in there that you trust for the next 3 or 4 years. And they could easily sign him to a 4-year deal. They'd be very comfortable with that. I think him being only 26 years old as well. So I love that as an upgrade to this offensive line. And then if you do that, you can still do whatever you want with Jordan Morgan. Have him start at guard. If you like Sean Ryan and Elton Jenkins still as your starting guards, Jordan Morgan can be your swing tackle, or if he outright wins one of those other positions, we have some nice depth we've developed on the offensive line there. So All right, phase 3, sign Paulson Adibo, who is a free agent, cornerback from the New Orleans Saints. He's 25 and a half years old right now, approximately. And, if you don't know a little bit about Paulson Adibo, he's somebody that the Packers were really highly intrigued by when he was drafted 4 years ago. And he's actually probably going to sign an affordable contract for a cornerback of his projection. Why is that? Partially because his season ended with that horrible broken femur, but I'm willing to take a gamble on that, especially for the contract that's projected, because it's not a torn ACL, it's not ligament damage. It did sideline him, but I don't think that that's going to take his athletic ability away from him. So Spot Track's projecting a 2-year, $22 million contract. So that's about an average, about $11 million. And for a above average starting corner, I think that that's a really nice value for this team and somebody who will immediately improve the team. If you like Keyshawn Nixon on the outside still, Adibo's going to come in and be your other outside guy that pushes Valentine to be your third boundary corner. That takes care of a lot of our concerns right there. If in this scenario we did trade away Jair Alexander, he had a 63.3 overall grade in 24, but 63.9 coverage grade. One thing about Paulson Adibo that I really like is that he's a ball hawk and he makes a ton of plays on the ball. He had 10 career interceptions so far.
That's immediately better.
Yes. If you look at an Eric Stokes comparison, which that's the same draft, right? Eric Stokes has had 1 career interception. And before Adibo got hurt, he had 3 interceptions and 7 pass breakups last year. So he's somebody, too, that profiles to be an athlete that the Packers like. He had a 9.55 RAS when he was, all his height and measurable from the combine. So I like the move. You got anything else to add about Paulson Adibo?
No, he would immediately come in at a really good value too and give us, I think, be immediately better, right? Considering he's, if he's healthy, which you assume that he would be. Yeah, I would love it. It's good value. And I think he'd come in right inside and play alongside Keyshawn Nixon on the outside. So I would absolutely be ecstatic if we got him.
For sure. So let's move into the draft, where in this scenario we're not gonna go after crazy free agents anymore. We've already picked off 2 pretty nice ones, which would be in line with kind of what we did last year. So tell us about the draft strategy for the Packers now that we've addressed the edge, center, and corner positions through free agency.
Well, yeah, it's a very deep defensive tackle draft, like we've alluded to, but we really like taking like a Kenneth Grant here from Michigan in the first round, or if Kenneth Grant happens to be gone, or the Packers have another defensive tackle hire, Walter Nolan possibly. There's a few other ones in there too that have quote unquote, first round defensive tackle grades. But we really like Kenneth Grant for, being a really good run stopper, a good nose tackle, and then he can provide a lot of really good pass rush too as well. He's very freaky. So that's somebody that Jordan and I are both keen in on. Moving on down into the second round, you're looking at some more Packers type of draft selections here, but Jalen Royals from Utah State in the second round I think would be very, very good. I know that some people on some videos that we've had, including our mock draft, have said, why are you drafting another Jaden Reed here? And I think specifically for Jalen Royals, it is his speed. He's able to vertically spread out the field. He does have 4.3 speed. He's a very good route runner. And also, I will say as well, he can catch the ball too. But if you decided that, or if the Packers decided that they liked Jaden Higgins more, obviously wouldn't be quite as fast, a little bit taller, a little bit more leaner, more of your Christian Watson, not as obviously as fast as Christian Watson, but he'd need to be a possession type of receiver, be able to get those bucket on third down too, which it seems like he can do that too. So it's all just about what the Packers kind of prefer and what kind of wide receiver they want to get. So anything you want to touch on that so far in the first and second round?
No, I think they can replicate speed with other players they have. So I really do like Higgins too. And he has proven that he can win on the short and intermediate routes as well as stretch the field with his 4.5 speed. So flip a coin. I would really like either of those options in the second round for the Packers. So moving forward with the draft, we're moving into round 3 here. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but this is where the shelf is going to fall off for the cornerback position. Now, we do feel probably comfortable at this point in time with the room we have and adding Paulson Adibo. We still probably need some depth at that position. but we still have an opportunity to add more talent, in the event that we have another injury or, we're ready to move on from Keyshawn Nixon after next year because, his shelf or his ceiling is limited. But some options here that could be available in the third that we love. Maybe they'll be gone by the time we draft, but A.Z. Thomas, we've talked about him from Florida State. He's 6'2", about 200 pounds. I can't wait to see him at the combine. Maxwell Harrison Jr., Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky. He might be a little light for the Packers. I think he's weighing in at about 185 right now, but if
He's
he
a
can
ball
prove,
hawk.
yeah, I like his ball skills and coverage ability a lot. So, and in the third round, that's maybe where the Packers would start to consider dabbling just outside their thresholds a little bit. You saw that with Amari Rodgers a couple years ago. You saw that with a lower RAS with Jay Sternberger, although unfortunately we know how both of those stories turned out going outside of their thresholds.
Yep.
I do think that Maxwell Harrison would be less likely to let us down with what I've seen on tape from him, though. And then Quincy Riley is another guy we've talked about a little bit in the past, but he's kind of a Jair Alexander 2.0 from Louisville. He could easily be available at the back end of the third round there to really round out our depth at that position. So, going into the fourth round, we can take a linebacker. Rob and I really like Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame. I think that there's some other Packers podcasts that have highlighted him recently as well, but he could come in and be a day one starter, I believe, next to Quay and Cooper, or at least at very worst be a fourth linebacker and provide us outstanding depth. Jamin Dumas-Johnson from Kentucky or Jeffrey Bossa are some other options that we could consider in the fourth round. And then we're going to do some Packers like things, but tell us where we go next in the draft or how we round this out.
Yeah, so this is, the spots of where the Packers live to be able to take offensive linemen. And, obviously they love their versatility with their offensive linemen. And they also like, tackles that obviously can fail into guard, right? Or have, positional versatility. So just a couple of prospects too that we really like. Jordan, you might have to help me out here too, but Johnny Corneliuson from Oregon. I apologize if I butchered that. Jalen Rivers from Miami is another good one too. I believe they met at the Senior Bowl. Emory Jones Jr., LSU is another one, from the Senior Bowl too. Good measurements as well. And then Jack Nelson, really tall, really big tackle from Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. This is where you're going to get some of your offensive line depth and where the Packers historically have really, hit. Right, David Bakhtiari being obviously one of those big ones from Colorado that they got in the later rounds that would fall into this.
Yeah, we're in the 5th, 6th round, and this is a great place for us to attack our tackle depth now. We solidified the interior earlier with Drew Dahlman. We still like Jacob Monk. We've got versatility with Jordan Morgan there who can play guard. And now you look to take a couple tackles off the board late and really give them a chance to compete and add that depth. I love that plan. How does this all work together with the cap? I'll give you a quick rundown. How does this work within our budget? The Crosby trade ended up being a negative, or I guess a positive for us, $2.2 million. Crosby's he's going to cost $28 million on the cap next year. But Alexander has a $25.5 million cap hit. LVN has a $4.7 million cap hit. So that trade alone, if you're counting just 2025's cap, positive for the Packers, $2.2 million. Drew Dahlman is going to cost us $13 million. Paulson, Adibo, about 10 or 11. And then we throw in a couple other just like little sweetener moves that we would make or could make. Sign Eric Wilson back as your 5th linebacker. That's about a $1.5 million move. Of course, we've all agreed that we need to bring Brandon McManus back. I see that happening to about the tune of about $3 million a season. And then we have to factor in the other non-fun stuff, but the Packers will need $10 million of this cap to sign their draft class, and they always hold about $8 to $10 million for in-season contingencies, so we'll call it 8 at this point in time, which brings us, with all those moves, brings us to a total cap spending of $43 million or $43.5 million. So we are about $1 million under budget, where we can still sign a veteran free agent to a league minimum deal, and probably have a few other small moves in there. Rob, take us away, or kind of close us out here. Give us a recap of how we attacked our off season, and let's get these listeners on their way back to whatever else they've got going on besides Sounds Gouda. So
yeah, well, we hit the jackpot. We got Max Crosby, so we got a premium edge player. Could not be more excited for that. Short up some cornerback with a free agent signing of Paulson, Adibo, along with a draft pick or two. And so getting some really good depth there too, and some really good players. Added in some speed at the wide receiver position, and also some good catching ability in Jalen Royals from Utah State, who we really like. I got a big bruising nose tackle that'll be a good run stuffer and provide some good pass rush too as well, and Kenneth Grant. And then we shored up our center position and our offensive line, specifically with Drew Dahlman as a free agent signing, and also with some draft picks that we were just alluding to. We round that out too with the linebacker, picking who we got in the draft, and then also signing Eric Wilson to provide some depth there too at a cheap vet minimum. So as always, Packers fans, let us know what you think about what we just all talked about. Maybe you have a different plan for the Packers. I'm sure that a lot of you might. And this is just something that Jordan and I think would help put the Packers in success, for this year, and quite frankly for the next couple of years too. So let us know where you agree with this, maybe where you disagree, and any other feelings that you might have. So as always, Jordan and I are on X. I'm at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olson Jord. Know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So please make sure to like, sub, and follow us on those platforms. Jordan and I just want to give you a quick call to action too. We are trying to hit 500 subs. And 3,000 public watch hours. So if there's anybody that that might like to nerd out just as much as we do with the Green Bay Packers, please send them our way. We would genuinely appreciate it. But as always, Packers fans, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better.